Hi there. I want to talk to you all about enough. How would it feel if you, just for 1 minute, really knew that you are enough? How would it feel if you really knew that you did enough? And how would it feel to know that you have enough? You don't need to go after more things, more skills, more consumption of anything. You know what? I think that the art of enough is such a useful concept for us to learn to grapple with in our age where we're obsessed with having more, doing more, wanting more, at the same time as being tormented in our inner lives by lacking so much. It's as if you imagine it's like a scales. My hands are a scales. On this end is scarcity, too little. It's like we feel like we're too little. The weight is tipped that way because we're just consumed by being not enough. And that then tips us to the other end of the scales, the other side here, where we've got too much excess. And it's like, because we don't feel like we're good enough, we feel like we have to do more to compensate, to overcompensate for our lack. So we swing between scarcity and excess, scarcity and excess. And right here in the middle, I imagine, is this idea of enough. That who you are is enough. And therefore what you do in any given day or time is enough. And of course, you know, we're right in the middle of a climate crisis, and we need to learn as a whole world, as a planet, how to have enough and to stop our overconsumption, how to rebalance that. I use the example of scales because I think it's so important. It's so much about balancing. And that actually when we get to that middle state, that state of enough, it's such a fruitful place. It's such a place where we can blossom, we can grow, because we're starting from a position where we know that we are enough. We know that anything that we do with our best intention, with everything that we give it, will be enough. And we'll be living in a planet that will survive and sustain not just us, but all the generations to come, our children's children, you know. So when I talk about the art of enough, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about reclaiming the concept of enough so that we can all learn to live with more ease and actually therefore get more value out of the lives that we've got rather than striving for what we haven't got. So in my thinking about the art of enough, I've created 7 stages. I've created a model which gives us 7 stages to help you to get really practical, to help you, to help us get really practical about how we can have, do and be enough. And the 7 things are these. I'll just go through them really quickly, and then over the course of these videos I'll share more and more detail, of course. So the first thing I think we need to do is to really look at our mindset. What is going on in our heads? Where are we coming from when we believe that we're not enough or that we have to do more? And what I'm saying is that at the moment, I think so many of us live in what I call a scarcity mindset, where we lack something. We're just terrified of not being good enough and consumed, and it's a terrible place to be because we're always striving to be more or better, and it's this sort of constant critical voice in our heads. So how can we reset that mindset of scarcity, or even a mindset of excess where we've just got too much to do? How can we reset those to find a mindset of enough? And an enough mindset is one that is really based on the fact that the world is abundant, what we need will come, that who we are is enough. And that gives us a really deep sense of self-love and ease. So that's the first thing, is an enough mindset. The second way that I think we can get ourselves to a state of enough is with permission, what I call permission. And enough permission is really looking at where are our assumptions and deep-seated beliefs that we're not enough come from, and perhaps really teasing those out and examining them. Who says we're not enough, and where does that belief come from? And very often in our lives, we find that those sorts of beliefs come from what I call an entanglement in something in our past. So something in our childhood, something in our family systems, something perhaps that happened to us when we were children in our education systems that convinced us at a deep level that we aren't enough, or that you aren't enough. And of course, we want to look at that, re-look at that, and work out how it is that we still believe something that no longer serves us. And there are ways, of course, that we can shed those beliefs and really work on creating a permission to be enough in our own lives and from our own insides. So how can we give ourselves permission to let go of a belief that we're carrying that perhaps doesn't even belong to us anymore about who we are? So that's what creating enough permission's all about. And then the third thing is what I call enough presence. You know, how we are, how we show up in minute by minute, moment by moment, in all our relationships and every single thing we do really matters. Because we're not just sort of automatons who do stuff. We have bodies, and we have nervous systems, and we have hearts, and we have guts, and we have emotions, and we're alive creatures. And actually what we need to have is some coherence in our nervous systems, so that we're really enabled to be the best we can be in any moment. And that requires us to really look at how we're connected, what our heart does, what signals our heart might send to our brain, what happens in our brain when we're under stress and pressure so that we go into fight, flight, freeze mode, and how we can calm that down always with our breath and find ourselves into a place of inner coherence where our heads, our hearts and our guts are aligned. How good's that? So that's about presence, and it's about our physiology, and it's about how we connect in with the essence of ourselves, really. And I really think that when we re-examine our mindset, our permissions and our presence, what we end up with is a reframe of how we can really be enough. And there are loads of practical things that we can do to help us with that. The fourth thing that I talk about in my Enough model is boundaries, and it's all about doing enough. So just as we need to be a coherent system, start that again. Just as we need to be a coherent system inside ourselves, so we need coherence in our lives. And I always think of the example of a murmuration of starlings, or a flock of birds, or a flock of fish even. How do those millions and millions and millions of creatures work in such beauty to create images that are just mind-blowing? You know, it's really complex. You get thousands and thousands of birds flying together and milling around and creating these amazing shapes. And it's called coherence in a complex system. And they do that by simply adhering to 3 rules. Fly fast, follow another bird, don't crash. Boom. That's how you get coherence. So boundaries aren't complicated, but they are important. And that when we create boundaries for our lives, really create boundaries and hold them day by day, week by week, it can absolutely enable us to flourish, because so often we don't keep boundaries because we feel, again, compelled by a sense of lack or a sense of excess, that we have to do more, or that there's always more to do. And I'm saying moving out of that into a state of enough, where we can really believe that actually it's right that we have time to recharge, and that we need to have boundaries in order to maintain our coherent state. So boundaries are really important. Setting boundaries and keeping boundaries, that's the hard bit. And then the 5th thing is about resourcing. Enough resource. So, you know, we know that we need recharging. Our nervous systems has got a rest and digest state. We know that we need to recharge. When we expend energy, we need to recharge our energy. When we've had a busy day, we need to sleep. When we've been for a run, we need to relax. You know, we know that there's a sort of cyclical pattern to resources, and we see it in the world around us. Nature is full of cycles, you know, the seasons, the weather systems, everything's cyclical. So what we want to do there is, what we want to do with our enough resources is say, do you know what? Acknowledge that we need to rest and digest, we need time to recover, and we need time to resource ourselves, really resource ourselves, so that we can be enough and be the best of ourselves in the world. The 6th part of my model is called Enough Growth, and this is where we really look at our obsession with growth being more, bigger, better, and how we can perhaps reframe that to what would it be like if we focused on deeper, more present transformation, where we really look at what it would take for us to blossom and flourish as people in our lives. What would it take to make us really happy? What would it take us to make us work really flow? It's that focus on growth being something more about development and depth and quality versus more, bigger, better. And we need to do that individually, of course, and we really need to do it as a society, as a culture, because at the moment we're over-consuming ourselves into a massive climate catastrophe, and we've got to change that. And then the 7th path to enough is connection. And this is where it comes full cycle, because we need to connect, of course, with our deepest dreams, our deepest desires, what we really want to be, what we long for, what our hearts long for. And we need to connect with each other. Our societies and our worlds are increasingly isolated and segregated. How can we really connect with each other? And then, of course, how can we connect with our natural world? How do we connect with nature? How do we connect with the planet that is our home? So there are the 7 ways that we can get to what I call the art of enough. And I really, really hope that you found something useful in there. And if you have, let's continue talking. Let's create a movement. Let's create a conversation. And I'll continue to offer both long and short videos, which will help to unpack some of the ideas within this. It's been great talking to you, and I hope to see you again. Cheers.